Thank you, Micah, and thank you, everyone. It's an honor to be here today and to get the chance to talk with you about one of my favorite topics, which is public conversation. I really think that at the heart of an open and accessible democracy is a free conversation that is essentially three things: dynamic, authentic, and open. And I thought I'd share a little with you about how we've thought through this process at Google and how we've developed some technologies that we think really try to deliver on those three core principles. So back in 2006, I came to YouTube because of this guy. This is George Allen, who back then was Senator George Allen. And he was captured on video calling his campaign opponent's worker, who was an Indian American, a macaca. And this video was uploaded to YouTube. It was the first ever viral political video on YouTube. It made national news. It created a huge conversation around race. And Allen ended up losing that election by 0.5 percentage points. And YouTube politics was born. I was a grad student at the time. I was watching this event. My jaw dropped, like many of you, I'm sure. This is a whole new kind of politics, fueled by people. It totally upset the power dynamic. And I knew that I wanted to be a part of it in some way or another. So I shot an email to info@youtube.com, just essentially asking, hey, is anyone out there thinking about politics at all? And they were, but there was no one there who was really leading the charge, and they were kind enough to let me come out and think through this new phenomenon at YouTube. Now, back then, there were basically two conversations happening in politics. One was the established one between politicians and the media. But there was this new conversation online that was led by a lot of online innovators, people like Phil DeValise, who uploaded the first ever viral political commercial to YouTube, Vote Different. Or James Katecki, a kid in his dorm room at Georgetown that started a fantastic political blog analyzing YouTube videos. But the problem was that these two conversations weren't crossing over. The politicians were still talking to and through the media, and not to this new class of empowered citizens online. So at YouTube, our first attempt to kind of figure this out and have those two conversations cross over was the CNN YouTube debates. How many folks here remember these from 4 or 5 years ago? Great. Well, these were the first ever kind of web to TV political debates, and we collected thousands of questions from people online. And then we posed them to candidates in a Democratic debate and a Republican debate during the primaries. And it was kind of an experiment, really. I mean, some of the questions were serious, like this one from a cancer patient undergoing chemotherapy, talking about the future of healthcare. Others were less serious, like this question from a snowman about global warming. But either way, the questions were from real people, or real snowmen, I guess. And that lent an aura of authenticity to the debate that I think was missing in the past. However, CNN chose all the questions themselves, right? So it wasn't really democratic. The media was still basically controlling the topics of the conversation. And that ability to make a dynamic conversation happen was sort of lost. For example, we had a great question come in from a general named Keith Kerr, who was gay and who asked about Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And we decided to play his YouTube question on the screen, and then we flew him out to the debate hall, actually, to ask a follow-up question to his YouTube question that was played on stage, which is, I guess, kind of ironic, since we flew him out there to watch his video question be played. But we were experimenting. And the general, whoops, I went too far ahead, actually. The general stood in front of a large crowd, sort of like this, and he was pretty nervous. I mean, he's live on television, all these people watching him, and he couldn't really get a good follow-up question out. The setting just wasn't quite right. And so I felt like we didn't really succeed at this goal of trying to create a dynamic conversation, a back and forth between the people who had questions and the candidates who were there to answer them. Well, a couple of years later, we decided to try something new, and we launched a tool called Google Moderator. Google Moderator allows you to submit and vote on your favorite questions online, and we thought, well, look, this will be a great way to sort of get the media middleman out of the way. It'll simply be, the top voted questions that we'll bring to people in these conversations. And we thought, look, let's beta test this thing. Let's kind of give it a shot, work out the kinks before you go prime time with this guy, the leader of the free world, President Obama. And he was kind enough to let us come into his office, and I sat there and essentially played one citizen-submitted question after the next. And well, getting ahead of myself here, but a couple of things before we get to the marijuana lobby. The conversation was interesting, right? It felt like a step forward. The president was answering questions from real people. You had that aura of authenticity there with real questions coming in. It was a more open and democratic dialogue because people had voted up their favorite questions. But obviously, it wasn't very dynamic. People couldn't follow through with the president through the screen. it felt like technology was still kind of getting in the way. Like it wasn't quite connecting people in a real way with the president. And like I said, the questions that came in oftentimes represented groups that could really mobilize online, which is a really exciting thing. It just caused us some challenges. You know, we realized that in all of the issue categories that we had, all of the top voted questions were on what the positive impact of legalizing marijuana would have on national security or education or healthcare. We could have spent the entire 45 minutes, in fact, talking about just that topic. So we had to kind of create a special category for those questions. We, of course, asked him one of them and then moved on to some others. But we were learning things. We were moving along. Well, a couple of years ago, I came over to Google Plus to help launch our new social platform at Google. And from the very beginning, one of the most interesting features of Google Plus was Google Plus Hangouts. And we originally created it to allow people to connect over long distances with one another, just as a communications tool, right? But when we flipped the dial and allowed people to actually broadcast these conversations, we suddenly realized, man, this is actually a good platform for public debate. And so we went back to the White House and worked with them once again to create a Google Plus Hangout with the president. And we brought 5 Americans into the conversation and talked for 45 minutes about the issues of the day. And suddenly, a light bulb kind of went on in our head, like, this is an actual dynamic conversation. I mean, people were asking questions, they were following up. There were some personal moments between the president and the people in the Hangout. And I'll show a few of those highlights right here.
Why does the government continue to issue H-1B visas when there are tons of Americans, just like my husband, with no job?
What industry tells me is that they don't have enough highly skilled engineers.
I understand that.
Jennifer, can I ask you what kind of engineer your husband is?
He's a semiconductor engineer.
That kind of engineer should be able to find something right away. We should get his resume, and I'll forward it to those companies who say they cannot find somebody in that particular field.
Appreciate your response, Mr. President. I'll have to take you up on that.
Thank you.
Mr. President, if it's all right with you, may I just introduce you to my children who are sitting just off camera? Come on over.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
How's it going? Make sure to study hard in school and do what your mom tells you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, great. You know, sitting inside the Hangout, sort of on the edge of my seat, I was moderating the discussion, and seeing that back and forth, that dynamic push and pull between citizens and the president, you knew something different here was happening, that the technology was actually kind of getting out of the way, and it was just about the conversation itself. There was no gimmick to it, really. It was just the ability for 2 people to talk, or for 5 or 6 people actually, to talk to each other about the issues that face the country today. And I think when you look at a technology like Google Plus Hangouts, they're getting us to a new era of social media. I think it's very powerful to be looking into the face of the person that you're talking with online, not at their Twitter handle, not at their Gmail address, not at a pre-recorded video, but at them, you know? I think in real life, people don't talk in tweets. People don't talk in pre-recorded videos. We talk in words and stories and narratives and ideas. And I think Hangouts allow that kind of open conversation in a really powerful way. You know, public officials really love the format too, because it makes the internet not feel like this place full of scary macaca moments, but in fact just a dinner table conversation over video chat. I think one of the other things about Hangouts is everyone feels very comfortable, right? Unlike the general, Keith Kerr, who at the debate stood up in front of that huge crowd and had to kind of get his follow-up question in there, in a Hangout, everyone's at home, right? You may be looking into the face of a senator or a congressman, but your family's nearby, your cat might be scratching up against your leg. It feels like you're at home. And so, you know, we like to say that in Hangouts, everyone has home court advantage. There's no difference between where people are at because you're all in your own comfort zone. I think also, you know, it feels personal, it feels authentic, but then you've got this screen there that's kind of like a digital safety blanket, right? It's far less intimidating to speak with someone famous or a public official when they're on the other side of a screen. And it creates a new dynamic for conversation that I think is really interesting. I think all of this leads really to great questions. When you're looking inside of a Hangout of somebody, they look like they're the same height as you. There's no height differences. There's not somebody up on stage with people down below. You're all kind of on the same level playing field. And that leads people to just ask really quality questions. The people that join these conversations, they aren't the Washington press corps. They aren't bound to news cycles, right? They can ask questions about whatever they want. They're not dependent on access to candidates or officials through relationships. So they're more likely to use this one opportunity to talk to a candidate to ask the question that matters to them most. I mean, when is the last time in a press conference that you saw a journalist stand up and ask a completely random question that had absolutely nothing to do with the news of the day or what people were talking about? You know, it's pretty uncommon. But in our last Hangout with President Obama a few months ago, Lamar Freed here in New York asked the president about patent trolls. He delivered an extensive answer that started a national conversation that is continuing, as we all know, even today. So there's a sense, I think, that you can get really quality conversations and really direct questions in a way that I don't think has been possible before. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and say that like Hangouts have completely solved public conversation for all time. There's still some challenges, right? I mean, it's only 10 people inside of the conversation. There's not much more interaction than that. There's considerable vetting that goes on for the participants before they're able to join the Hangouts. The public officials feel comfortable. And the technology itself requires an internet connection. It requires access to a webcam. So there are barriers to even get past for folks to even have the chance to join a conversation like this. But I do think that it's leading to a more interesting way to dialogue in ways that are dynamic, authentic, and open. There's a lot of interesting momentum here. You know, we saw the Dalai Lama do a hangout with Desmond Tutu about a year ago when he couldn't fly to South Africa because of visa issues, and he wanted to wish Desmond Tutu a happy birthday. A couple of months ago, we saw a Belgian mayor hold a series of marriage ceremonies for gay couples in France before the law had changed, allowing them to marry one another in front of family and friends from all over the world inside of a Google Plus Hangout. And I don't think there's anywhere on the web today that's using Hangouts in a more interesting way than the Huffington Post's new live venture. They're doing 12 hours of Hangouts 5 days a week. It's so interesting to see. They're bringing a whole new class of people into the conversation. People like this woman, Jamae Moore, who came to join a segment to talk about the minimum wage, herself being a worker who had left a job that paid her minimum wage because of how little she was earning.
You work in retail, and you are now an organizer. How did you get to the point where you were ready to fight back? What happened?
Well, it's pretty simple. When you get checks that are like $100 after you work 2 weeks straight, and you see your check and you're thinking it's going to be, you know, a decent amount, and you see it's like $100, like, what are you supposed to do with that? I take care of a lot of people in my family.
So what's next for Hangouts? I think there's a lot of directions this technology could go. One of the most interesting aspects of Hangouts, we believe, is the opportunity for mobile Hangouts on air. Back during Hurricane Sandy last fall, we saw a lot of people start Hangouts on air from their laptop. They would then tilt the webcam out the window and show people the trees whipping around in their backyard, the rain coming down. This is really a way to do live citizen reporting using their laptops. Imagine if they could do that over a phone, right? Imagine if during the Arab Spring, you had several different people live streaming from different parts of Tahrir Square. Let's say they could add a news organization to their circles and suddenly beam directly into TV and do a live man-in-the-street interview from where they stood in the square. I think this is the kind of thing that, in fact, could do for live video what YouTube did for archive video. I think all of this is important because the things that we talk about in public, the conversations that we have out in the open, say so much about who we are as people. And if we can make them more dynamic, more open, and more authentic, I think we'll be in a lot better place. And I can't wait to see where people take technologies like this next. Thanks a lot.